founding partner at Rocketship.vc, a global venture capital firm. And I have the pleasure to have with me Rahul Garg, a founder of Moglix, one of the most exciting, fast-growing companies in India today. And I'm also happen to have the pleasure of being an early investor in Moglix as well. So I've had a great relationship with Rahul over the years. So it's a great opportunity to have a candid conversation with him in front of this audience. Rahul, let me start with a question for you. Moglix, of course, today is a great company, a unicorn in India. But what was your career before you started Moglix? What were you doing, and what gave you the idea to start this company?
So, firstly, thanks, Ty, for hosting, and good morning to all the people watching the show. So, I think for my journey, I think I've had a bit of an unconventional journey. Because I spent 15 years working professionally across multiple domains before starting Moglix, and I would just split it into two parts. First one was when I was the semiconductor design algorithms specialist, working on designing all exotic stuff of wireless technology you see in your house and in your offices, like wireless LAN, satellite receivers, 4G cell phones, so on and so forth. And the second genre being running Asia strategy for Google, working across multiple markets on what are the new products to be launched, how do we grow the internet ecosystem in the region, how do we solve for different consumer problems that are being encountered. And I think, interestingly, the vantage point with which at Google I saw the Asia ecosystem evolving and somewhat globally, internet as well, I think has some of the roots of how Moglix got started, because I was seeing all these exciting B2C companies disrupting the traditional search information classifieds way of exchanging information and getting access to product and service, suddenly leading to full stack solutions where you can get your food delivered, you can get your clothes delivered, you can get your mobile phone delivered, and you could get your grocery delivered. And I was very, very intrigued by the fact that for every single consumer transaction, there is 3 to 4 more B2B transactions that have happened before the actual consumer product can be delivered. And why is that working in a sort of an old school fashion of procurement, supply chain, technology enablement? And that sort of started to excite me enough, and an inspiration, both due to the vantage at which I was seeing the internet ecosystem, as well as the disruption in consumer life, leading to believe that this should happen in B2B, and we are going to be the ones try to make it happen.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so this is what led you to start Moglix. And once you started Moglix, obviously you're an entrepreneur starting your company for the first time. How did you what was your early part of your journey like? Did you have to struggle to raise funding for the company? Can you describe maybe some of how you raised money? What was the early part of your journey like?
So I think for us, the early part of the journey was actually pretty much going back to the drawing board and trying to figure out a problem from first principles. We had a luxury of almost traveling across multiple countries, multiple cities for first 1 year, because nobody knew what was this B2B commerce all about, and how should it be developed, what kind of technology, whether the markets are ready for this kind of disruption, what does it take, and so on and so forth. So I think, we realized that if you actually do a decent plus job in 15 years of your career, getting that initial seed check is not going to be as difficult. So we were lucky enough to have Axel, Jungle, Mr. Tata, some of the people come in and say that this is a large enough problem that you are going after. We know that we don't have the answers yet of how this is going to be solved, and what will it entail. Is it seems like a right timing, and we are going to back you if you're committed and spending next 5 to 10 years trying to build this out. And yeah, in some ways, that is, and that's why I encourage when I talk to many of the entrepreneurs, and sometimes you hear this question, right? That is there a difference between an employee and an entrepreneur in terms of how much hard work you put in, or what kind of sort of extra mile you would go in either of the two? And I say, like, I have never distinguished between the two as much in my past 15 years as well. I would say I was working equally hard. I was working with the same level of passion of solving problems. And people see through that, because you build a habit of doing the right thing, being passionate about it. And those things enable you to get the seat check. So all my ex-bosses, I mean, like, everyone was just like very, very supportive, leaning forward in terms of that if you are going to do it for the right reasons, we are there to back you and support you in. And yeah, we don't know the outcome, what it will look like, but we believe if you put your heart to it, you might have the best shot of solving it.
Great. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I can flip the question now, Anand, because I think you have also a unique vantage of being an entrepreneur as well as an investor in the journey. And it would be great, I think, for the audience to kind of hear about how did you start the first company, Jungly, and why the name, and was it ahead of time, early, and why did you even consider going down a route of acquisition at that point in time?
Sure. So, this takes me back 25 years, actually, back to 1996. It almost feels like a time machine. Back in 1996, I was a graduate student at Stanford. I did my undergraduate studies in India and went to Stanford to get my PhD in computer science. And then I was just minding my own business, doing my studies, when I met these crazy guys. We all had this idea. Look, here's this internet. The internet had just started back in '93, and we were all amazed by the potential of the internet, and what you could do with it, which is so very different from what is possible. And it was just very new. The web browser just came out in 1993, and this was just 1996. And we said, look, there's something really unique here. In this web, and there must be some amazing things that we can build using it. And so a bunch of us got together, and we said, let's try to do things like online comparison shopping, online, searching online for job listings and so on. Things which have never been done before. Now we take all these things for granted, but 25 years ago, this was all very, very new. Nobody had done it before. So we said, look, let's do all these things. And so I dropped out of my PhD actually at Stanford, and together with those crazy guys, we decided to start this company. Now, unlike you, Rahul, none of us had a track record. We were all students, who had done nothing before in our lives, who were starting this company in this crazy thing called the internet that nobody had heard of before. So when we went and pitched all the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, nobody would even give us meetings. So let's not funding. First, they had to give us meetings, right? So they wouldn't even give us meetings. And sometimes we got very funny rejection letters from them as well afterwards. Actually, they used to mail rejection letters the day. They didn't even have email. So so it was quite funny. Then finally we met a bunch of angel investors who were kind of leaning towards us in terms of putting in some initial capital, and the next day we had to pitch these angel investors with our business plan and so on. And we realized the big problem we had the previous day. We were working on the slides to present to them. We realized we didn't have a name for the company. We have a nice presentation that we've been preparing, but we don't have a name for the company, right? And then so we said, how do we come up with a name for the company overnight? So we said, fine, okay, let's brainstorm, right? And we were brainstorming, I think, one of Echo Ashish's house, and the previous night. And then we were thinking, like, how do we come up with the name? And then we were thinking, look, the previous company, there's been one big success before us, a huge successful company there's been only one in the internet space that has been started by students and has become successful, and that is Yahoo. right? So, and we had met the Yahoo guys, and we were very impressed by them. And at the time, and they were like mentors for us. So we said, okay, what comes after Yahoo? And then we remembered the Shami Kapoor song. If you remember the Shami Kapoor song, it
Yes,
goes,
yes, I
Yahoo
do.
chahe koi mujhe jangli kahe, right?
Right.
Goes, Yahoo chahe koi mujhe jangli kahe. So after Yahoo comes Jangli. So we said, so we'll call it Jangli. Right? So, so that was the name of the company. So
No,
that was the
that's
origin
an
of Jangli.
amazing story because I can see parallels of how people ask me this question also. Why do you name the company Mowgli? And I said, there is a jungle which is required to support to grow a Mowgli. And that's how the name. So I think there are
There you go.
all of
So
these
I'm
interesting.
Jangli and you're Mowgli. There you go. So, fantastic. Yeah, no. So that was the Jungly. That was the Jungly story, and finally, those people did end up funding us. They gave us our initial check, and we started the company. But we never successfully raised venture capital throughout our company because nobody understood what we were doing. It was still the early days. This was all pre-Google, right? So so we never ended up raising any funding from any VC firm whatsoever. On Sand Hill Road, we pitched all of them, and they all rejected us. But we ended up raising funding from our main customer, which was the Washington Post company. That's how we funded that was our Series A funding, and that's all. That's all the funding we raised till we exited. So we just raised a couple of rounds of funding, a small amount of money, and then when we met Jeff Bezos, he really had this vision of wanting to sell everything. He wanted to be the everything store, right? He wanted Amazon to be the everything store, and he knew that Amazon could not sell everything, so he had to create a marketplace. Just like you, Rahul, he also had the vision that Amazon cannot sell everything. Amazon has to create a marketplace, and this was back in 1998. And he said, "Look, you guys are creating a marketplace, and I want to build a marketplace at Amazon. So I'll buy your company, and you come and build a marketplace." So we ended up being acquired by Amazon. Worked with Jeff Bezos to build the first marketplace at Amazon. Whenever you buy from a product at Amazon from a third-party seller, not directly Amazon, that was what our team built at Amazon. And now that's exactly Rahul what you're doing, except for in the business-to-business space. So it's kind of come full circle in a very nice way.
Yeah, and it is very interesting. It takes 20 years and many failed attempts by multiple entrepreneurs before you figure out that timing is so important in the business model as well, because there are all of this dot-com bust. And interestingly, in your journey, you have seen now probably Web3 is the new word. So Web 1.0 to Web 3.0, what it may look like. But from that journey to becoming investor to becoming a entrepreneur again to becoming an investor, at least I would say just dwell a little bit on why become an investor and why become an entrepreneur again.
That's that's an interesting question. So after the Jungi experience, right? So one of the things that we realized was exactly what I told you, Rahul, that nobody wanted to. This was back in the day, in the late 90s. Nobody wanted to fund first-time entrepreneurs, and we actually had very difficult time raising seed funding, which is very different from today, right? And in those days, we found it, and we saw there is a gap in the market. All these big VC firms, they're great once a company has a certain amount of traction, or if there is somebody with a track record who's starting a company. But what about a first-time entrepreneur who's coming straight from college, or who's coming, starting their first company without much experience? How do you, raise funding? So two of us who were founders of Jungly, Venki, Harinarayan, and I, we both saw this opportunity that there is a space, a gap in the market to create a seed capital firm. So we actually created perhaps the first seed capital firm in Silicon Valley. Before anybody else came up with the idea of seed capital. This is called Cambrian Ventures. Before that, they were angel investors. We were the first kind of, I would say, institutional seed capital firm. Jeff Bezos was our anchor investor because of the work that we did at Amazon. And we ended up seeding a lot of interesting companies from Silicon Valley or of Cambrian Ventures. Many of them ended up being very successful. They were bought by Google and Amazon and many other companies pre-IPO. We had, Google and so on. So we had good exits from some of the early big data companies, from the earliest ad tech companies. All these things we funded. Now, so we did all these. That fund ended up doing really, really well. And then we realized one thing along the way, right? It's nice being an investor, but the problem with being an investor is that the entrepreneurs never listen to you, right? So you can tell them whatever you want. They never listen to you. That's great. You make money and all that, but you don't get the fulfillment of actually doing anything. So then Vicky and I said, look, no, we actually want to be hands-on and do something again. So we said, let's start another company, right? We'll come back to venture capital later. So we started.
So you realized it was too early to retire, I guess, because you might be still 30.
It was extended solid retirement. I mean, the way I say it is like this: like when you're an entrepreneur, it's like a contact sport. You're actually in the stadium playing the game. When you're a VC, you're sitting in the audience and watching. So it's like a spectator sport. So that's what it is, right? So we wanted to be in the on the ground playing, not sitting in the in the stand watching, right? So we said, look, let's let's start another company. But so what we were really fascinated by, this was in 2006, 2007, was the emergence of big data and AI in those early days, right? And this was before deep learning and all came along. But we could still see the potential of big data and AI, and we said, look, let's start a company around this space of big data and AI, and maybe we can apply it to the web and all that stuff and see what happens. So that's how we started the second company, Cosmix. And as it so happened, we were social media came along, and we became one of the first companies to apply AI and big data technologies to social media and so on. And eventually, that company, by a strange turn of events, ended up being acquired by Walmart. And Walmart acquired Cosmix primarily to get our team and to get us, so that they could compete with Amazon, because we knew because they were sort of lagging in e-commerce, and they thought, look, we need to somehow create a kernel of a team that can compete with that can build the technology to compete with Amazon. So once we got there, the first thing that we realized was, look, our team is not big enough. We have a good team at Cosmix. It's like 60 people, but we need hundreds of people maybe to build enough mass to create something like an Amazon, right? And so we said we had to create a new division within Walmart. And so we created a new group called Walmart Labs. So I set up the Walmart Labs office in Silicon Valley, set up the Walmart Labs office in India. And now that team is thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And at least it sort of gives Walmart a good place to recruit talent and compete with Amazon. So now I've helped Amazon build a marketplace, and then help Walmart build a team to at least try to compete with Amazon. So I've been on both sides.
Yeah.
So let me.
Where should we have a cue? Which stock we should bet on?
No, no partisan politics. I believe that too. To individual people decide. But but Rahul, but coming back to your career, so clearly you started Moglix, and you've been building the B2B solution for logistics solution for India, right? How has the space evolved since you started Moglix, the B2B logistics space, and how do you sort of how has it evolved over the last few years, and how do you see it evolving over the next next decade or so?
No, so I think it's been a very interesting journey, because I think probably many entrepreneurs who create new categories or new business models, we have gone through our own journey where, while we had a fantastic set of believers, we had probably maybe, if there were 10 believers, there were like 90 non-believers. Good thing is we spoke mostly to the 10 people who were believing into it, which kind of gives you the optimism as a founder, right? That there are people believing into it. And
Right.
you realize that over the last, we launched in 2016, and over the last 6 years, as we finish, we have seen kind of the entire landscape completely change. Early on, people would say, we don't believe it will happen in B2B, because B2B involves people making decisions. One individual cannot make a decision. There are business process involved. there is this entire efficiency that maybe large companies might have already achieved because they've been doing it for 40 years, 50 years, unlike a consumer. So all of these kind of questions. And when we came to 2017, India went through a massive tax reform, which fundamentally is the starting point of India creating modern supply chains in B2B, because you start to have pan India, one country, one taxation kind of philosophy. And you start to suddenly say that, guys, if I was talking in a 50-kilometer radius, 5 different warehouses, I can actually now just do one warehouse. Better inventory turns, better supply chain, better technology capability to be introduced, and so on and so forth. So I think what we have seen through over the 6 year journey is, and 21, I think 2021 was a very interesting year, because we feel that B2B came out of the shadows. That before, I would say almost till 2020, there were more stories of company dying than company surviving and thriving. And Moglix kind of spearheaded that element, where that we continue to believe in it. We continue to sort of solve for the problem that we felt was important, and we had to go and solve it. And but come 2021, I think there is a lot of believers that this entire B2B transactions across different industries, across different segments, there is a lot of role that technology can play, and there is a lot of organized ecosystem that can play a role versus unorganized, fragmented. Can we do it only in India? Can we do it globally? I think Moglix has been expanding now into UAE and now looking at multiple countries. So I think we have seen pretty much from a non-existence, uh, old school industry, to starting to have a silver lining, that there is a large industry which is probably ripe for disruption. And next 10 years, I think today still we are scratching the surface. We are less than 0.5% of the ecosystem. And if you look at evolved consumer ecosystems, and you have seen that in US and in various parts of the world, you start to look at 10 percentage point, 20 percentage point, 25 percentage point. I have heard 45 percentage point, right? That's the most extreme. So you almost see that this is like 100x from where you are today as a organization, as a ecosystem that needs to go. And that is super exciting, because every year we sort of look ahead and we say, holy shit, there are 10 things we didn't know, which are additional possibilities for us as a company. And there are 5 more deeper problems that we need to go and solve. And these problems and opportunities are sort of multidisciplinary in nature. They are no longer like a software only. They are software, operations, financing, change management, people dynamics, today also geopolitical elements of supply chain, and how global supply chains will get disrupted. So we feel actually very fortunate that we early on committed to this space, which is almost infinite in nature.
Right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and I think the COVID in particular, if I was to say that, and now we are facing unprecedented times of Russia and Ukraine and various things. I think world around us is changing. It's not just India is changing. India is for sure changing at a very rapid pace with the introduction of various schemes of building manufacturing capabilities. I think as a country, I'm actually somewhat proud for the fact that we have executed the largest vaccination, both manufacturing as well as supply chain distribution and enablement, in the largest population in a democratic environment. Okay, let me just add that in a democracy, you are able to execute what we were able to execute as a country, and speaks a lot of sort of just the commitment of the country, and a belief that technology can be at the center of it. And I think this change will continue. We'll see. But 10 years out, I would say this will be both massive in terms of global disruption, but also how B2B will catch up to the B2C. I think we are 25 years behind, if I was to say that way. But we will get there faster.
And it's probably a bigger opportunity in the longer run, right? As you say, there's like 2 to 3 B2B, 2 to 3x B2B is 2 to 3x of B2C, right? In the long run.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll flip the question. I think you came back, I think, two successful entrepreneur, and I think powering the two of the largest global companies in some shape or form to starting Rocketship. How do you see Rocketship different from the earlier stint? Why invest in Moglix and the whole? I think you speak a lot about data-driven approach, and that has been the core DNA. What is
Right.
it all about? And for the startups listening to this program, uh, how how can they reach out to you, and what excites you if you were to invest into those companies?
Great. No, I think that's a great question. So just to continue with the story, right? So we did, as you say, I started Walmart Labs and all that, and after that, Venki and I said, look, let's go back to investing. We started two companies. It's time to go back to investing again. But we said, look, how has the world changed, right? When we started Cambrian, this was back in 2000. What was needed was a seed capital firm. Now there's plenty of seed capital in the world. We don't need another seed capital firm. But what has changed in the world so far, since in the last 10 or 15 years, is that entrepreneurship has gone global, right? So, I was very fortunate to be, in addition to starting my two companies, an early stage investor in Facebook. I was, and was an early stage investor in Lyft, and I was an early stage investor in many companies that ended up becoming really big out of Silicon Valley. But then when I looked around mid 20, around 2015, 2016, what I saw was that there were big companies being built all over the world, not just in Silicon Valley, right? And what was clear to us was that, look, the next Facebook or the next Google need not come from Silicon Valley. It can come from anywhere in the world. And so we have to change our game somehow. We want to be in the most exciting companies wherever they are. I happen to live in Silicon Valley, but so what? I want to be an investor with the best company wherever it is. So how do I even find out about these companies? Look, in Silicon Valley, there is a network, just like there is a network in Bangalore and there's a network in Delhi. Everybody knows everybody. You find out about things, right? But how will I, sitting in Silicon Valley, find out about the best company in India or the best company in Indonesia or the best company in Brazil, right? So to invest in. So we said that the only way I can do this is through the lens of data. If I can build I'm a data guy by training. So if I can build a data set of of all the startups in the world, and then I can track them through this data. It will show me which startups are the most interesting and the most exciting in the world, and then I can reach out to them wherever they are in the world and invest in them. And so we said we're fundamentally going to change the investing game to work through this methodology of data, where our data will tell us what the exciting companies are, and then we'll reach out and talk to them. For example, the data told us a few years ago that Moglix was one of the most exciting companies in the world, and we reached out and we talked to you. The data told us this because of the quality of the founder, as well as the team and the investors, and the kind of problem you're solving and the early traction that you were having as a company, right? So all these things went into the data to recommend you guys. And then we talked to you, and then I was very, very impressed with you and what you were doing, and we ended up making the investment. So that's the typical model of how we invest in companies. Now we built a global portfolio. Now we have companies in India. We actually have about a third of our portfolio in India today. About a third in India, about a third in the US, and a third spread across the rest of the world, which is basically Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and North Africa, and some in Europe, right? So that's kind of the what our portfolio is. We are typically a Series A, Series B investor, so early, and we are typically not the seed. We typically a Series A or a Series B investor. So that's kind of where we come in. Now, in terms of one of the interesting things that where the data led us to is to sort of led us to India, to invest in India at the right time, is what I think. We invested in 2017, in 2018, and 2019, and we can all see that 2021 and 2022, the last 2 years, these have actually been the decades of massive hyper growth in India. We're hearing about one unicorn every week or every 2 weeks or something, right? So Fortunately, the data led us to invest in India and make big investments in India before this happened. So that our companies became unicorns after we invested in them rather than before, which is actually a good thing, right? So that's the interesting thing. So yeah, but I think this is a very fascinating, and this is the thing that I'm most excited about in the world today. That it used to be that 10 or 15 years ago, the most interesting startups came from Silicon Valley, and because Silicon Valley only had the technology and the technologists who could understand and build these things. Now all these technologies are commoditized, right? Any entrepreneur anywhere in the world can build a great company using big data, using AI, using blockchain, using mobile, using any of these technologies. They can build a great disruptive company, disrupting whole sector of the industry anywhere in the world, right? So I think that's the thing that I find most exciting today, that this is happening globally, and that we can participate in this kind of, if you can think of it as kind of the digital disruption of the world, right? Is kind of happening right now, and participating in that and investing in that is what Rocketship is all about.
Fantastic. So I'm told that we are running out of time. So both of us need to give some parting thoughts. So, but I'll let you lead, Anand, and then I'll give my parting thoughts as well.
Sure. I've thank you, Rahul. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Chatting with you about your journey and learning about the early days and how about the future of Moglix. I'd like to thank Ty for giving us this opportunity as well.
No, thank you, Anand, and it's great speaking to you as well. And for all the listeners out there, I think you hear entrepreneur, investor, and all the analogies Anand spoke about being a player versus being the audience, and I think both are very, very exciting things. And best of luck to all the startup entrepreneurs. And irrespective of when you start, I think if you're doing the right thing, funding will come, whether you're fresh out of college or you're coming with experience.
Exactly.
So thanks a lot, Ty, again. And